You're listening to the Backlog Podcast with host Kevin Lane and Joel Rubel, bringing you weekly discussions on gaming, as well as sports, entertainment, and anything else that they can think of.
Something wrong with me, man.
You got that right.
Be sure to check us out online at thebacklogpod.com, where you can listen to the podcast and get links to Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
A little bit of something, something.
I'm Joe.
I'm Kevin.
And we are
The Backlog Podcast.
Yeah.
Now, gear up and get ready, because we're about to check another one off of the Backlog.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Backlog Podcast, and as promised today we welcome Troy Tuttle. Troy is otherwise known as 2LoudTX and is a well-known face in the Fortnite community due to his contributions as both a podcaster and a caster. In this realm, casters are announcers. You might know that term. And Troy co-hosts the Fortnite Podcast with another well-known face in the Fortnite, Monster D-Face. So if you're not sure who he is, you're probably living under a rock, or you just don't know what Fortnite is in general. But Monster's a regular caster for Fortnite events, and he provides awesome YouTube content for the Fortnite community. So you can find him on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube at Monster D-Face. And his Instagram is Monster D-Face with an underscore at the end. And you can also follow Troy on Twitter and Instagram at 2LoudTX. And you can listen to new episodes of their podcast every Monday. I found you don't advertise it too much, but I found thebestfortnitepodcast.com.
Yep.
And if you just search the Fortnite Podcast, it's going to come up in any browser or podcast app. And you can follow them on Twitter at the Fortnite Podcast. Don't worry about writing all that down. I'm going to tweet it out later in case you don't already have it. But without further ado, Troy, you're a tough man to get a hold of, but I am so glad that we finally meet. And
yeah, man. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I know it's been we've been talking about this for a few months, going back and forth. I think we were supposed to record, one evening and last night, and I failed to do that. It was my son's birthday, and it totally skipped my mind. So, forgive me for that. But yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here. Excited to be here.
I'd say he's a little bit more important than me, but you just met me, so we'll gauge that later on.
It's true. It's kind of the thing in esports now, in the realm of podcasting as well, is there's a lot of people coming up, and the importance of someone can definitely change throughout time. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I want to ask about this because I hear you talking about it on your podcast quite a bit. And forgive me, I feel like I know you. You don't know me very well, but that's the benefit of the podcast, right? I mean, you do this every week, every Monday. You put out a new podcast, and without fail, you're there, and you have an excitement about you that, about the Fortnite community and about the Fortnite product that I've seen waver across, I've been with Fortnite since like the week it came out, and I've been addicted ever since. It's what prompted the final initiative to start the Backlog, because it was like, man, all these awesome games are coming out every week.
It's true.
I draw myself to Fortnite. And I even went, stupidly enough, when Fortnite came out, I was hell-bent on the Battle Royale. And then I saw Tilted Towers come out, and I was like, that stuff's overrated. It's old. And I got sucked into the Save the World. Played that for like 4 or 5 months. And then Season 4 comes along, and I was still watching people, and I was like really interested in the story that they were building. And I jumped back into Battle Royale, never really looked back to Save the World. And I missed out on all those skins. So I was one of the OGs. And I don't got the skins to prove it, except for one. I got one OG skin, but anyway.
I have one. I have when Renegade Raider came out. I guess you could call it Season 1 technically. I didn't buy Renegade Raider. In fact, Noel Zero, the guy that was doing the podcast with me, he bought it. I didn't buy it. I bought the pickaxe. So I do have the pickaxe from Renegade Raider, but that's the earliest. So I think it's funny. Yeah. So okay. It's like spiky, I think, with barbed wire on it. I don't remember.
Yep, I got that one as well. I didn't get the Renegade Raider, but I bought
it. Is because in Season 1, it was a joke, and we talked about this on the show early on. It's like, oh, I reached level 30. Now you're going to allow me to buy something that cost literally $30. Like, to get the skin was $30, and I believe at that time I don't even know if it was V-Buck oriented. It might have been just straight cash MBR at that point, like purchase. Yeah, I
don't think there were V-Bucks. Maybe there were.
Maybe in Save the World, V-Bucks were existent, but I don't remember. I have to go back and look, but like at earlier videos. But I want to say the first season was just straight currency, and then they implemented V-Bucks in second season. I think it's funny though, to take us back to one of your points that you said is that you feel like you know me because you listen to the show right every week. And this is something that really intrigues me because I do the same thing with people that I watch and listen to. So one example is Hex from Optic Gaming. Hex has his own podcast called The Eavesdrop. Really cool, where he interviews high-level people. I've been around Hex at events like Call of Duty events I started getting into covering last year for Deserto and being flown around. And so, like, by default, I think I know Hex, right? Like, I listen to him all the time. I hear his story. I can tell almost anybody about the trials and tribulations that Optic have gone through, what they're going through now. And I've seen him. I've shook hands with him. So, like, I literally think when I talk to people sometimes in my mind, I have to remind myself, oh, wait, I don't really know this person. Like, I think I know them, but I don't. And that's so interesting to me because then you look back at it like you do. A lot of people think they know me, right? I share a lot about my life. And I hope people actually do feel like they know me. To me, that's the sign of a good podcast, right? It's like, if you are interested in me and then interested in the topics that we're talking about, then I want you to be in your car sometimes be like, Troy, I love you, but I hate you because you're an idiot for your choice right here, right? Like, I'm good with that. If that's happening, that means I'm doing a successful podcast. And I think that's really interesting that how you mentioned you think you know me because of that. And I think all of us in the social media realm tend to do that because of how available our lives are to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how you talk about like going to these events and you know, getting to know these people. Now that you're where you're at, I mean, let's face it, and I'm kind of skipping ahead on what I want to talk about, but I mean, it's a perfect topic right now. I mean, Fortnite is without a shadow of a doubt the biggest game ever, and it has revolutionized the gaming industry, the development industry. You talk about it every week, just how I mean, it was unheard of to expect changes in games every few days or weeks. I mean, in months, you would have to wait months for an update on a game. And that was just a year ago. And now they're changing the way the whole gaming industry works. And, you know, there's always positives and negatives to everything. One of them being now we're hearing tons of stories about all these developers overworked and, you know, upset and the bad experiences there. But Fortnite as a whole is doing something just absolutely insane. Epic Games obviously has been around for a while, but Fortnite as a whole just came out and no one considered that a AAA title, and deny them now. And literally the biggest game ever, both profit-wise and player-wise, and it's free. You don't have to spend $1.
Yeah, it is really interesting what they've done to try to transform gaming as a whole, right? I think they've transformed an outlook from the outside, right, into gaming. When you talk about Fortnite being this monumental thing that's been worldwide, it's brought some good eyes on gaming and some bad eyes, right? At first, I remember a lot of like ABC News and stuff is like, your kid is playing too much Fortnite. Their life is going to hell. And
ABC News and
right. It's like I wish Epic would just purchase them. No, but like I think it's interesting because not only from that, they've also transformed the esports space. We talk about that a lot. I think it's still a battle, probably for them internally and how they deal with it, because a lot of people think traditional esports, and we've come a long way to get esports where it is now, and why buck the horse? And they are like completely bucking the horse by giving everybody awards, by, taking, opening world qualifiers to everybody, not just organizations that have names or money, especially in a time where, you have Overwatch League where, their spots cost millions and 20, 30, 40 million dollars to have a spot on Overwatch. And I don't know about you, but like, I don't talk to a whole lot of people that just watch Overwatch.
That's actually a huge factor here. And that's actually leads up to what I was going to say is like your podcast is, now I know you've done a couple of podcasts here, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but this one is the Fortnite podcast. I mean, that's what you title it. And it's true. You go around and look at all the different ones, and I've listened to 6 or 7 different podcasts. There's none as consistent. There's none that have the face that you have, and with Monster there, and Monster working with Epic every week, and like just there is no other podcast that you need to listen to if you listen to you guys every week, unless you just can't get enough Fortnite. And so you're there, right? You're the host of the most important game in the gaming industry ever. Some would laugh at that, but at the same time, it's made its presence. And you've got the podcast. So what does that do to you now? Now people know you. They feel like they know you. And so when you go to these events, I mean, some of these streamers have to be thinking the same thing you were just thinking, right?
Yeah. I think that's a thing you have to always put yourself into. I don't know if you remember last year, like in the fall around like Fortnite and everything else, but a lot of streamers were saying how depressed they were. And a lot of streamers were talking about, how overwhelming it's been and everything else. The space is in an interesting situation right now because for streamers, there's not a boss, right? It's you. How hard can you push yourself, right? And that's also driven by the community you form yourself around. If you are around people that are literally streaming 12 hours a day, you're going to stream 12 hours a day. Like if that's the community you involve yourself. I had a youth pastor tell me one time when I was a kid. He said, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." Right. So, if you show me what you're involved in and what you're doing, you're going to gravitate to those areas more, whether it's good or bad. Right. And one of the things I'm definitely going to try to teach my kids as they grow up is, hey, like what is your surrounding? What are you doing? What is going on? Because that's going to be reflective of what you'll be tempted to do, what you may do. Right. And it's the same thing when it comes to content creation. If you surround yourself with people that are building content continually, you're going to be driven to build content continually. The problem is that right now it's a race. It's like a rat race, right? Like everybody's trying to get to the top. Everybody's trying to get there. Everybody wants to be the next Ninja. Everybody wants to be the next Tfue. And sometimes I think what happens in the space is people forget to, and especially, and this happens to me, we forget to embrace the small rewards, right? And the small steps. It's really easy. It's really easy for somebody like Spaceline, who's in phase, been in phase the whole time since the beginning, for him to look and go, man, I only have 250,000 followers on Twitter. I only have maybe a consecutive 500 people that watch me while I stream all the time. I really want to get to the next level. But for me and you, if that was happening, we'd be like, I got 250. This is where I wanted to be. This is what I wanted to do. And there was a time that he was like that as well. It was a time whenever I was like, man, if I can just have 100 people listen to my podcast, I'll be happy with that. But being the biggest game in the world, I want hundreds of thousands of people to listen to my podcast a week, right? I mean, whether or not there's 100,000 people that are listening to podcast yet, I don't know. As far as in this space, right, in games, the trouble that we have with the podcast is that so many times somebody is a fan of a game or they want to be a fan of what's going on, but they don't know either podcasts exist or the demographic is just not somebody that's going to listen to talk radio.
I was going to say that I ran an ad the other day on my Instagram. I've just started putting some money into, pushing our content and stuff like that. We really didn't do any social media. I'm probably around the same age as you. I'm not sure exactly how old you are, but I'm
34. 34. The prime age of 34.
There you go. Yeah, I'm 38, about 39. And so
we're ripe. We're ripe. Although 5 years ago I would have said, man, those are old people. But now I'm saying we're just ripe.
Oh, yeah. And so I see, I have nieces and nephews. They're all telling, oh, you can't, Facebook's over. I mean, I ran a t-shirt business for 10 years, going back to like 2005 to 2015. And Facebook was all I needed to communicate. I was able to target with ads and stuff and do exactly what I wanted because it was a side thing, but it was still, there was no Instagrams and Twitters.
Right.
I mean, there were, but it wasn't what it is today.
Right.
And so I just now am finally, like 2-3 months ago, my son really he wants to start his own YouTube channel with Fortnite content and everything. And so I got all this stuff and I've been pushing it. Long story short, for his birthday, I was really hell-bent on getting him a creator code.
All right.
So I pushed everything and I got up over the 1,000 and we got a creator code and it was cool and super excited. And so now he can tell his friends when he's playing, I got a creator code. But what do you do with that, right? So now I go and I'm pushing the content on Instagram and Twitter, Twitter for me is like a graveyard. No one's commenting. No one's, I mean, there's retweets and sometimes some likes, but Instagram is where it's at. So I go to Instagram and I start putting $5 ads out just to see. And I did a Fortnite ad and I looked at the demographics. It was 68% were under the age of 17 that looked at that. And it blew my mind. I mean, that's like, yes, we can, as if you're trying to sell a product, that is, you know, you're not going to sell too many products to those kids unless they can go convince their parents to buy it for them. But if you have content, they're going to watch it. The 13 to 17 demographics are exploding in this environment. So, but you just said a huge important point is like, they don't even know podcasts exist. I was talking to a 16-year-old kid on a random, Fortnite match, and I was telling him about, I ran a podcast, and he was like, that's stupid. He just thought it was stupid. And I was like, well, just give it a listen. Tell me what you think. And at that age, it's like, I don't know what age it is to where they stop thinking it's stupid and start thinking they got to listen to every episode. But you got yourself, if they stick around for a little while, if this game lasts another 2 years, those, you know what I mean? It's just like, there's this massive group of people who are going into this, and you got them by the balls. I don't even know how to really explain it.
I think like, if you think back to, I know it's hard for us in our old brains, but if you think back to 10 or 15 years ago, was probably like in my early 20s, I just started getting to listen to talk radio, right? Like I just started listening to sports radio, ESPN radio, whenever here in Dallas, 103.3 was really popular. And of course, popular amongst the group of people that I talk to and working in business here in Dallas. Obviously, sports are a huge thing. So if you look back, like I think you have to be somewhere around that 18 plus range for podcasts to really matter to you. I mean, I have nephews that are huge Fortnite fans that know what I do, know the people I speak with and talk to and events I go to, but they don't listen to the podcast for a week because they just don't care, right? Like they would rather, they number one, they don't have the hour in the car, right? Number two, if they are in the car and they're 16, 17 years old, they're bumping some music, trying to impress the girl walking down the street, not listening to talk radio. You know what I mean? So you have to put yourself, I think, in an understanding of that. The difference is that as the millennial group, if that's what you want to call people of our age, we're at the higher point, I guess, of the millennial group. But if you want to call that, as we continue to age, there's a huge group of us that will continue to move forward, and we've brought gaming this far. Beforehand, like, you don't have a huge demographic because podcasting is in the past 5 years is gaining people because the people that are millennials are growing up and starting to listen to podcasts because we know it's the new wave, right? We know it's the new thing. Like radio is disgusting. No one's going to be on it much anymore. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't really turn on radio. I turn on, like, if I turn on anything, it is sports radio, but I'm not trying to get my news from there. Like, I would love the statistic, how many people actually that are over the age of 40 get their news from television and radio versus people under the age of 40. Right?
Well, it's funny. The only time radio's been in my car for the last probably 4 years is when my Bluetooth didn't connect and it came through.
Yeah.
Accidentally. I don't even consider going to the radio.
Yeah, once you discover the world of podcasting, you can get what you want and talk about what you want to talk about. Why would I need to go listen to anything else? Right? That's the mindset of it.
Well, my other thing though, when vlogging, right? My son, he's 8, and Ali, he'll watch Ali do exactly what you and I do for hours. I mean, hours. He'll just go through every single Ali video he can. And if Ali was on a radio or on a podcast and you don't see his face, so that's something my co-host Joe and I are going to be doing, is trying to find a way to practically do a visual version of the podcast as well. Not that our content is, we talk a lot about Fortnite, but we also talk about, any game really that comes to mind or things like that. But I mean, people know you, people know Monster. I mean, if you ended up doing a video session or whatever,
We have something really cool that we're about to announce. Actually, I haven't talked about it anywhere else yet because we're just finishing up. But we are launching a Patreon for the podcast, and as you know, podcasts don't make a lot of money. So what we're doing is we're actually launching a Patreon as low as $2.99 to get an extra episode a month and to start getting the video version of the podcast. So
That's awesome.
it's coming out. We'll be releasing either this week or the following week. So we got everything lined up, got it approved. We've been brainstorming, working on all the different tier awards, because the thing that you want to do when you do a Patreon, and so many people get a bad taste in their mouth with Patreons because they join it and either doesn't really bring any value to them. They're paying too much maybe for what they thought the value was, or the content creator gets overwhelmed and isn't able to manage it, right? So for us, a big thing when we went into talking about it was focusing on something that is tangible as far as, really good content for the listener. And then also making sure it's something we can provide and continue to give. So we got some really cool stuff coming out for that. But yeah, I mean, podcasting is a different beast, man. It's growing like crazy. You see more and more shows every day. You mentioned consistency. Just like streaming, you have to be consistent. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, there's even been times where Monster couldn't make the show, and I knew we weren't going to get one out in the first 3 days of the week. So I just pieced together something, whether it's I went and took, audio from a video of his and put it out when he read the weekly update notes or whatever it was. But always providing your listeners with something of value. And then whenever it's not up to par, the cool thing about podcasting is your listeners aren't there for perfection. They're there to enjoy you and get to know you. And I used to spend hours, bro. I'm telling you, I spent 4 or 5 hours editing an episode of the Destiny podcast back in the day. And I would get done and be like, all right, there's my Sunday. I literally spent 4 hours out of my Sunday. My wife, just had a baby. My wife could have killed me. Like, it was a disaster. I don't know why I did that, but every and E and like everything I could take out, I took out. And then I was like, wait a second, people aren't getting like the real feel. And I listened to all these other podcasts. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, you listen to like Joe Rogan, one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and he doesn't edit that stuff out. It's all in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I breathe heavy. And I don't know how to, I practice all these different things. But when I listen to myself back, it's like, oh my God, will that go away? How do I fix that? And some of it, yeah, there's filters and things that you can do. And I've tried to automate a lot of that stuff because just like you, it's funny you say that. I mean, yeah, my wife will be in the other room just shaking her head going, is he ever going to come out of that room? It's like, no, I'm just 5 more minutes of editing this, podcast. And then 2 hours. I edit longer than the actual podcast is.
Yeah.
People don't realize how much really goes into all that, but it's a hobby, but or a passion project or whatever, until it's not. And I want to keep it fun. And, when I listen to other podcasters like you and some other different podcasts, it's like, I get energized to do it myself, to keep going. The first time I finally decided we were going to do it, we were going to have a 4-person panel and go over the different things. And I'm kind of glad we didn't, even though I wanted those people on, because Joe and I have a pretty good, we get along really good, and we have a good flow opinion. And as we're learning each other and learning our way through, it's like we get to do it the way we want it. If
you involve too many people, it gets crazy. We had Amos's Gaming, which was the first big project, an LLC I actually launched based off of creating the Fortnite podcast. Before the Fortnite podcast, it was started out Dad's of Destiny, went from Dad's of Destiny podcast, which was my first podcast. And imagine the first podcast you ever release gets 10,000 listens. That's exactly what happened.
Ooh, wow.
Very first episode I ever released of the Dad's of Destiny podcast was like 7,500 people.
How'd that happen? I mean, was there a reason? Did you know somebody, or?
So I knew Destiny was going to be huge, right? I knew Halo was huge. I knew Bungie was going to be huge. And I've been in the gaming industry since I was a kid. I'm playing games. I'm a huge addict of it. I grew up in a really competitive sports family. And so for me, I was the youngest of 3 boys. But I knew at least in games I could beat my brothers at something. Although in basketball and football, they were my brother's 6'4", 6'3". I'm 5'10" on a good day. And so my brothers were 6'3", 6'4", 210, 215. And so they're big boys, and they could do a lot of stuff. So besides playing point guard and pick up basketball, which is what I did a lot of the times, and trying to just be fast and run, I knew the one thing I could be better at was video games. And so that's what I always was just intrigued by. I was always more competitive. I remember pissing off my oldest brother playing Super Techno Bowl on the original Nintendo and him throwing the controller across the room, and how much gratification that gave me, right? I was so happy to piss him off that much to be able to win.
The halfback pass left.
Yeah. Exactly.
Run it up the line. That was the best.
Every single time, it's so, the original one, you throw it to Bo Jackson, you basically scored every time. So
Every time. Yep.
But it started there, and that was kind of my passion. I grew up playing games. I broke my ankle playing football in high school, and was on the couch for 3 months, and that's really where it took off. I started playing NBA Jam a ton against people that would come over. Got really good NBA Jam. And then
pick up Rage 2? Sorry to cut you off, but did you see the Rage 2 stuff?
I haven't picked it up.
Did you hear that they put that guy, the announcer for NBA Jam, in Rage 2?
Yeah.
That was the cool stuff.
Some nostalgia there, obviously, but
for sure. But yeah, so you were playing NBA Jam.
It took me to play. I had a PS2, and I wasn't really playing it much, so I went to GameStop. I was managing a restaurant at the time. I was like 17 years old. Don't ask me how I got to manage one of the best restaurants ever. I don't know, but in my hometown of Rockwall. His son was my age. That he needed managers to train. So while we were going through high school, I literally managed a restaurant called Joe Willie's for like 4 years. One of the best places in my hometown here in Dallas. But ended up going and taking my PlayStation to a GameStop, and I was in there, and there was a lady behind me that was wanting to buy a PlayStation 2, and I was looking to sell a PlayStation 2, and the guy inside said, "Hey, I can't have y'all do that in here." And he said, "But you will get more money if you sell it to her directly." So we tested it inside, showed that it worked and everything. And then I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not going to sell it to GameStop. Might bring it back." So I went outside, got the money, walked back in, bought an Xbox, and bought Halo. And literally at that point, my life changed. When I played Halo, and I'm telling you, I grew up playing games, but there was something about Halo that really, really triggered me in my competitive nature. And when we started doing LAN parties, I remember like I was on sports teams and stuff like that in high school, but I was hanging out with all the people that played games, right? And everybody's like, "Y'all are friends? Like you hang out with those people?" I'm like, "Dude, these are like my best friends. Like this is who I spend all my time with when I ain't with you guys playing sports, right?" Like, and we had a friend that had a pool house, and his parents wouldn't care, and we would bring 4 TVs and 4 Xboxes and we would have Ethernet cables running through the pool. So luckily the cables are coated, right? Because they weren't long enough, but they had to run over the pool, and they were dipping in the water. I remember in the winter, the cable froze in the pool, right? So like we are doing this because we love playing video games so much. And it just spurred from there. One thing led to another. I knew when Destiny was coming out, it was going to be huge. And I wanted to get into podcasting. I had listened to this podcast for a long time called the Angry Gamer, I think it was. And they also had like a bunch of different shows that they did. They became a Red Barrel, I think, at one time. But anyways, ended up listening to that. I was like, man, I want to start a podcast. I ended up going and starting the Dads of Destiny podcast. That led to us saying, hey, we don't want to be tied down by one game. Let's do something else. So we launched Amos's Gaming. We ran that for 2 years. We worked with Ubisoft. It was really cool. We started the Siege the Show, which was Siege the Show podcast. I still wish to this day that podcast would have never gone away, because as I told the guys I was doing the show with, like, Siege is just on a slow start. It's going to get better. And look at that game now. Like, it's one of the top 3 competitive games worldwide. Four, if you want to, let's put it this way. Top 10 esports games worldwide. So we don't have
that one was weird when it came out, because it had one of those high expectations, and then it dipped, and a lot of people walked away. People that stuck around, I mean, they're still there, and it's come back with some crazy resurgence. And
Ubisoft is special, man. Ubisoft really is a great publisher. People can have their opinions of it. I've been on the floor with Ubisoft. I went to E3 with Ubisoft in 2016. I've been behind closed doors with them when it comes to talking and building content. And there's not I would challenge as a publisher, like, they're one of the best in the world. They really care about their gamers. They really care about what people want. And if you're a fan of Ubisoft, it's due right, because they really are. I mean, everything from, I was there with them when Siege was coming out, when Ghost Recon was coming back on, right? So they were launching all these new platforms. They had a new ski game that was coming out when we were doing a lot of stuff with them. I wanted to start a thing called Ubisoft Radio, which is covering all the Ubisoft games. And they actually took that idea and do it themselves. So good for them. I don't have time anyway, so it worked out. But yeah, a lot of, I basically was just trying to get everything I could and learn how to podcast. And it led up to the launch of Fortnite. And I looked at my buddy 2LoudTX and I said, hey man, I got to start a podcast on this. Do you want to do it with me? And he did. He just lost interest.
Right up to November 2017. I was looking at. I mean, you hit that one right out the gate.
Yeah, I knew I had to jump on it quick. I just knew it. And then 2LoudTX ended up saying that he was getting tired of the game, which is totally understandable. He's more of an RPG guy, so it didn't hold him for a long time. And then I went ahead and picked up Monster D-Face, and I had Monster on as an interview early on. And then whenever I went with Deserto, who kind of sponsored the show, they really. I think the long story there is Deserto brought me in to be their Fortnite specialist, and I just happened to come with a podcast, and they just happened to want to go ahead and try to publish it, see what they could do, because their experience in podcasts is very minimal as well. I think they have like 2 podcast shows. They had, at the time, they had me and the Deserto Talk Show. Now they just have the Deserto Talk Show with Richard Lewis, by the way, I admire greatly. But yeah, so I got Monster came on, and the rest has been history, man. Like, me and him become friends. We didn't know each other before that.
Did you realize that, again, when I'm doing all my snooping, looking around, last week was your year?
I didn't know that.
May 14th, episode 27. That came across as your first episode.
I have to text Monster that we've been together a year now. Happy anniversary, Monster. He's a great dude, man. I couldn't ask for a better partner.
He seems like a awesome partner to be involved with, in the sense that, one, he's young, he's active in the community. He's not just sitting there watching you do your thing and letting you put all this together. He's out there creating his own content, and he's also a super positive guy as well. That's one of the things that both of you bring to not every podcast or story or YouTube channel or whatever is about the positivity. And yeah, there's negative everywhere you go. So if you constantly shit on something or talk down about it, like if you go to Reddit or whatever, I mean, it's like 90% of the posts are why everything sucks. But what about all the good? I mean, there has to be good, right? And that's what you guys bring to the table. You talk about, you're not afraid to talk about controversial subjects. You bring up, like the Tifus. I did not expect you to be talking about that right off the bat, but you do. You jump right into it. A couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, there was some clan stuff. I forget exactly what it was, but you jumped right into that stuff because you are the face of the community, and you have to. If you ignore it, people are going to say, "Oh, they sold out," or "Oh, they're Epic's telling them they can't talk." No, you just jump right into it. And the fact is, you bring. You're not taking sides. You're not doing. You just talk about it, and then you explain how you feel about it. But there's always this positive attitude about what can benefit. What can I think you both said this one here. No one can win in this situation, really, and it's a sad thing. So rather than trounce on this and talk negative about it, you're just bringing it to light. And I just think that's awesome to hear both of you.
Well, that's been a learning curve. I think Monster would probably say the same for him. He's probably been a little bit better about it throughout his career. But there was times in Destiny that we hammered Destiny, but I learned something from that, and that was, if you want support from a publisher or a game creator, you got to be really careful about how you address negativity. Look, there's a ton of channels out there that are popular, and they are 100%, like straight up. If they are pissed, they're going to tell you they're pissed. If they're happy, they're going to tell you you're happy. And that's fine. Like, that's some people's tea. And at the same time, I don't think it's selling out if you're careful with how you carry yourself. In fact, sometimes I think that's the problem with social media is we think it's okay just to say fuck you to everybody that wants to say, excuse me if I can't say that, but
no, absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
like if you want to say it, like you can just say it, right? And it's okay. And I don't care who I hurt. I just want to say it.
No repercussions.
No repercussions. And like I get part of that because I remember growing up and be like, I'm going to be who I want to be. I don't care what people say about me.
Yeah.
And that's still partly who I am. Like I'm going to be who I want to be. But at the same time, I also have learned what happens in this thing called business in the real world.
You want to be part of these companies and part of the journey.
Right.
I mean, you said it yourself. You've grown up on gaming. I have too. And my co-host Joe, I mean, we talk about, that's the only reason we're friends is because I was forced to go to a kid's birthday party with my wife. And I'm like, oh my God, I just want to stay home and game and catch up on stuff. And why don't you go? And she's like, no, my wife, my friend's husband's going to be there. I think you guys will get along. He plays video games. She just throws everything into it. He plays video games. And,
Yeah.
So I see one dude sitting on a picnic table in the back and I'm over there, just kind of standing next to my wife for a few minutes and finally I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to walk over and talk to this guy. And I go down and sit next to him. The rest is history. He's one of the funnest people I've ever met. And the only reason I had the guts to go over there and sit next to him was because video games in quotes. And the best part is when you've grown up through all the different generations of consoles. I mean, there's kids now literally in Fortnite tournaments that have only been playing the PlayStation 4 because they were too young for the other systems prior to it. Right. But we've got the Ataris, we've got the old school stuff, we've got the even the Commodore 64. We can talk about, and so having that history and the build is something special, and to be able to bring that into today's world, the connected world, is amazing.
Well, it's interesting. And that's one thing that's going to get lost as our kids grow up is like, PCs, like Power GPU. I don't know if you follow that guy. Power GPU builds computers, and
he was the one on the podcast. He was the other guy on the podcast.
He's literally made an incredible living for himself now, being able to support his family, have a rental house, like all this stuff from being able, and all he was originally was help to some of the big names that are streamers. Hey, I can help you solve your computer problem you're having. I can tell you what to do when it comes to dual streaming. I can help you build a PC. And he's built a career out of it. But our kids are going to know that, right? They're going to know, hey, I either really need to build a nice PC or buy a nice PC, or I need to buy a console, and that's it. And it's the newest console. The other one's like, what significance to my son, does PS1 or PS2 ever have? Yep. Nothing, right? Nothing. He'll never have it. My son will never be able to say he lived through the generations of gaming that we have. Like, that's one thing people always forget is the millennial group is the gaming group, because we are the ones that were born around in the 80s when the Nintendo really came out in 85 and made its big boom. And then we watched the incremental jumps that happened from regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, right, with Sega, and then Sega ES or whatever it was, and then going all the way through, right? We saw how many consoles came to fruition and failed. Sega Dreamcast, right? Like, these are things that we all lived through that built gaming to what it is now, and that won't be existent. Like, my son will never have appreciation for that, right?
Well, if you look at the last game I played on I want to say it was the PlayStation 3 before I jumped to the 4, was Grand Theft Auto 5. I played the hell out of it, and it's still one of the top games on, if you go to Twitch or whatever, people are still streaming it, and it's still getting content updates and whatnot. You have the online. That's a last generation game. And, I remember looking at it going, wow, this looks really good for a PlayStation 3. And here it is still holding up at the end of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox, One. It's like the jumps are not the same anymore, and they won't be to the 5. I mean, it'll be cool. There'll definitely be some upgrades and all that. But in a world where Fortnite is giving us updates every week, I tend to look more at what Google's talking about doing. And I think there's no doubt Amazon's doing the same thing, because I've been getting, offers to play off of their cloud as well. That's going to really rock Sony. And now you see these with Sony and Microsoft working together. I don't know if you saw that news last week about their cloud-based software and distribution. So there's an obvious change that's about to happen that may be more significant than we realize.
There's a service that a lot of people don't know about that NVIDIA's been working on for years. I got an invite to it. It's like an NVIDIA cloud service, right? And this NVIDIA cloud service basically allows you to play on any PC. So you don't even need a good PC because they're handling all the major pressure, right? I was trying to see if I could figure out. It's just GPU Cloud, I think, is what it's called with them. But I got invited to it. I haven't checked it out yet. But I honestly think I know people have said for years like consoles are dying. I believe Fortnite kind of, and I've never talked about this, but I think Fortnite kind of put a fork in consoles a little bit. And this is where I stand on it. And I'm a console player. Like for anybody listening, like I got one of the brand new Astro PS4 controllers.
How is that? Oh, man.
I love it, by the way. I love it. I'm an addict for anything that's Astro. I always have been. I have a couple SCUF controllers. I have a clutch controller. Like I'm a PC guy. I mean, I'm a console guy. I've always been. I have a PC. I let my nephew borrow it for the past 8 months to play Fortnite on. I haven't used it at all. I use a Mac mainly for all my recording stuff. But
do you know why you're a console guy over top of a PC guy? Is it because of the
because of simplicity, right? Because it was easy accessible, because I could just turn it on and play. I didn't have to worry about boot up. I didn't have to worry about antivirus,
all that stuff. Yeah.
But where we've come now, and with people like Power GPU who can build a really good computer for $1,600 and it be good for a couple years, right? And have the best performance. I'm talking about like people that care about best performance, people that care about best grade, people that care about the most competitive nature are going to move to PC, but they're going to move to PC with console controllers. And I think that's what's going to happen at first. I think you're going to see a big transformation of people going, and it's happening already in Fortnite. You see so many people playing with a controller, right? They're a controller player, but they're actually playing on PC. Right? Aiden is,
to that point, because I prefer playing with a controller over keyboard and mouse, and I'm a super fast typer. I don't think it's a problem of not knowing where the buttons are or whatever. I just prefer, and I've grown up that way, and I've played keyboard in different games, but I prefer it. But when you see someone like Aiden or Nick Merckx being able to, and Aiden's amazing. I mean, I was watching him literally last night, and his edits, I can't imagine it being possible. And I put my sensitivity exactly to what his is advertised as, and I just don't understand. It has to be computer related, because on the PS4, it doesn't respond the same way.
I mean, think about it. Like PS4, you're maxed at 60 frames per second. You're just not gonna, you're not gonna get above that. I remember at one time, I don't even know if this option is still in there. They had a unfiltered model at the very beginning. I think we talked about this on the show, where you could actually turn on the frame rate where it was uncapped, right? And I think we're getting like 70 on a regular PS4 is what we're getting at sometimes. Now, it would also drop like to 50 occasionally, but that's why they had it an option to have it capped at 60. Because remember, when the game first came out, it was 30 frames per second.
Yep,
and then when VR came out, it had to be 60 frames per second, right? So
and now it's 200 frames per second for some of these guys. And
insane. So, I mean, I think if it, like a lot of people think, oh, frames per second, I don't really understand that. I remember thinking that as well when I was younger, but it does have a lot to do with how clearly you can see the game and how quickly your movements can be fluid. And I think that's what's happening in their case. Sure, they're on PC, but I also, and I don't know if this is true, but I also believe that sensitivity on PC might say 10, and you might put a 10 on your console, and they're not going to be the exact same.
Yeah,
that's right, because of input into Windows and everything else. Everything has a different sensitivity level, and so I think that's part of the issue as well. I mean, I've had to actually back my sensitivity down in Fortnite, maybe because I'm getting older. Maybe it's I turned 34 this year. I don't know, but I had to back it down a little bit because I was like, dude, I'm building like crazy. I'm not even building properly. I'm building improperly. I'm just throwing down crazy, crazy.
I don't know if it was you or Monster or both of you talking about a couple months ago about sticking with one sensitivity and getting used to it no matter what that is. And I just have not found the one that I feel like I could compete with. And I will never, ever be in competition. But I mean, part of me says I can get in there and beat these kids, but I know I'm not gonna. I know I can't. And so, but I still try. I still go in there, and to realize that, they're all under 17 and they're whipping my butt. It's like, what am I doing wrong here? What's going on
Yeah.
wrong in my head or whatever? Because even on PS4, I know I'm playing with people with controllers and they're just like going up, and their edits are so much cleaner than
because
mine.
they spend 10 hours a day playing the game, bro. Trust me. If we spend 10 hours a day, we might not still be as good as them, but we'd be a lot better than we are.
That is a fair point. But prior to the podcast, I was probably a bit better. But now I spend a lot of my spare time that I would have been playing that, doing this and coming up with content. They're trying to, I'm in the process of, I keep saying this for the last 3-4 months, but getting content. I'm more of an automation kind of guy. I want to be able to sit down, hit a couple of buttons, and then have everything work the way I want it to. So I'm geared up. I'm almost ready to go and launch the stuff that I want for YouTube and Twitch. And I know I'm going to be doing it to nobody for a while, but I want to be part of the space. I love it, whether or not I'm successful in it or have anybody watching. And when I look at what you guys are doing and hear about all these different things that you have, and some of the stuff we didn't know about, going back and seeing the stuff you've been a part of. Look, you were casting at an esports event, probably multiple, right? Have you done more than one? Or
Yeah. So I casted in past year. I casted WSOE in December.
That was awesome.
And then I also did an Apex event just 2 months ago in LA as well. So and I think there's a lot more coming down the pipeline. So there's a lot of discussions happening. It's crazy you start getting involved in it. Like there's a million casters out there. There's a million people that are great at casting. And it's all about like making sure. For me, it's about like obviously working in with my schedule, but also being able to do something I love. Like I'm going to do games I love. I don't want to do games that I don't really know much about.
Yeah. So I want to talk real quick about the fact, as a father, getting your kid or kids. I don't know if both of them are.
I got 3. I got 3 little boys. Yeah, I got just turned 5 yesterday. But I also have a 7-year-old who is my main Fortnite player. And I mean, you can ask this kid anything. I can say, hey, I can say, Cambridge, when did the John Wick skin come out? What season was that? He'll tell me immediately. All right. Hey, Cambridge, when did they put a rocket launcher in the game? He'll be like, oh, that was this. When did we start? Like it's absolutely incredible. I don't know how he knows more than I do about Fortnite, but he does.
10 hours a day. It's my son's 10 hours a day with Allie and Ninja and whoever else he can get his hands on to. And I don't even know he's watching it, but he's got himself a tablet and
right.
He's been actually. My son pulled this thing. I don't know if you had to deal with this, but he was setting an alarm for like 4:00 in the morning, and going on his tablet and watching videos for a couple of hours, and I only knew that because
mine hasn't figured it out, but I'm sure he will soon. Yeah.
One of his friends told him that he did that, and I didn't even think, oh, my son's going to pull the same crap, but he did, and I know because I have Google Home and I can hear him making the alarm requests and stuff. So it's just crazy these days, but so it's awesome. Like, do you play with him or do you watch him or how do you get
I don't ever talk about this publicly really. But with me, it's tough, man. Gaming is my getaway. Always has been. It's always been my getaway. It's funny because, you'd think as much as I do in this space, I just launched a YouTube channel this year, which I'm not consistent on at all yet. And I have the podcast going and obviously play and help out with a lot of different little things here and there in the industry. Work for DeSoto, doing freelance stuff, going to Call of Duty events. You would think that, hey, this is kind of more of a job for me, but for me, it really feels like it's something I enjoy doing. It's something that I really, really like to do. And I love to talk to people, love to meet people, love to be involved in the space. So gaming for me is my escape, and it's really tough for me to enjoy playing games with my son. He's 7 right now, right? So if I get down in Fortnite and I'm like, all right, I have very little confidence he's going to clutch it out, right, to pick me back up. And that's tough for me. I know that's everybody listening might be like, dude, this dude is a hardcore dad. But like, for real, I do play with him. We typically how I handle the issue is I'll say, I'll give you 5 games. Like I'll play 5 games with you. Most of the time I pick that around because I'm a selfish human being. I pick that around like needing to get challenges done for certain things. Like for right now, like the Michael Jordan basketball thing is out, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll play 5 games with you, collect my coins, get that done, and then be all right. I'm done with those 5 games. I'm going to play with my friends now, right? So you need to go play with your friends. So yeah, I mean, I'm not as good. I got a friend named Bradberg who is really good about playing with his son. He's always like, hey man, trying to get my son a win. Will you jump in here and help us? And I want to play with Brad. So I'm usually like, yeah, it's fine. But like when you got 3 kids, I don't always want to be playing with kids. You know what I mean? Like hopefully people can understand that. It's not a negative thing. I'm not like being mean to my child. But I'm literally trying to say like, I need my space a little bit.
Yeah. My son, he's decent. I would say if you put him in a group of 8-year-olds, he can hold his own. The problem when you put him in a regular map and he gets whipped and gets upset and frustrated. But just like you were saying, I mean, I want to get in there, but I was raised by a man who was try your best at all times type of guy.
Right. Yeah.
So I remember being a kid and walking and he'd say, hustle, let's go. And it's like, we're just going to the damn grocery store. What's the big deal? But and now I see myself doing the same with my son. Hustle, let's go. Come on. And so he wants to play creative mode, but not learning creative. He just wants to get in there and mess around. And I love the fact that he has his own group of friends that he gets into. He doesn't even know them, but he just jumps in and all these kids the same age are playing, but they're screaming and they're hooting and hollering. And I can't take it. I can't take that. So when I play with him and the same stuff with the YouTube stuff that he wants to do, I said, look, I want to teach you something that most kids your age don't have a skill set on. And that's being able to focus on a camera, being able to talk, with a steady voice, understanding what you're talking about and the structure of it. And it's tough. I mean, it's super tough, but I find myself when I'm playing games with him getting super frustrated because he's not doing what should be happening. And it's like, there's one actually it was was it the marshmallow event? Yeah, it was which one was the one where we disappeared into the sky? It was white and then
that was for
the end of the cube, right?
Yeah, that was the cube event. That was the end of the cube event.
Yeah, so he and I were grouped up and the cube event happened. We're floating in the sky and then I kind of assumed we were still going to finish this match out. So boom, we come flying from the sky. He and we landed. He got a kill. I got a kill. And he didn't get too many kills on a regular game, but he was stoked. So we ran off to the side off of Loot Lake and we geared up and we came back down and it was 4 people left, me and him and 2 others. And we had this thing in the bag and he just rather than try to end it, he's running around looting, chopping trees down. And I'm like, what are you doing? There's 2 guys right there. And we're sitting in the same room. I got so frustrated. He ended up getting, he decided to go build off in the distance to hide while it's just now 2-on-1. I get downed. I'm like, get over here and res me. He's like, I don't know how to do that. It just he panicked in the moment and then we lost. We had this whole thing. And I was like, I am never playing with him again, man. We had this, but I'm super tough when it comes to that kind of stuff because I expect him to try his best. And I know he's my 8-year-old is such a good kid that I'm a bit hard on him when it comes to that stuff too. But
I'm the same way. I'm competitive, and so I have to select my times to play games with him very very cautiously because of that. Sure. I think that I also want him to have his own group of friends. I made some of my best friends, some of the best people I know I made in gaming, playing games with. That's one thing, people that really talk negatively about games, that's one thing they don't understand is there is real social experience. There are real relationships made every day on video games. Yep. And sure, there's negative stuff. I mean, there's negative stuff everywhere. Parents want to say, oh, I don't want my kids to say bad things. I don't want them to hear bad things. I don't want them to do bad things. They're talking to these people. I don't understand who they are on the internet. How many of your kids' friends do you know that he goes to school with?
Yeah. Very
I don't know any of those parents. I don't know any of those kids.
I just got the year yesterday and all these bases to names are just happening out of nowhere. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, but suddenly, I'm okay with him doing that. He spends every day with these kids. I don't know what they're telling him, besides what he tells me. And trust me, the stuff that my son hears at public school is not any worse than the stuff he hears on the internet.
100%.
Do I give my son free freedom to just do whatever? No, I don't. We definitely watch it. There's definitely things on the internet you don't want your kids to see. But my point about it, and you know, I think internet access is different from gaming, and that in a lot of parents' mind isn't different. It's almost the same thing. Like if I give them unlimited access to internet, I got to get, you know, then they have unlimited access to gaming. There's sorry, you can't do that. Like they're not the same by any means, because gaming has a culture of people that are usually there to share a common ground, right? And if you want to put the internet in quotations as a whole, it's toxic, you know, and it literally it's there. So anybody that wants to listen can listen to any corruption that's going on, right? So my opinion of it is just like, I love to play games with my son. I want him to have his own space. And at the same time, I don't think gaming has such a bad rep, like, and it shouldn't. And I think hopefully as me and you continue to age and our kids grow up and millennials become parents of this generation, that a lot of that negativity will dissipate, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the youngest of 5, and my oldest sister, almost every time we see each other, I get that, like, he's doing too much of this gaming stuff. You know, you got to get bad. It's like, I love her to death. She's one of the smartest people I'll ever know in my life. One of the most loyal, and but I think she's wrong to a point. She'd hate hearing that. Luckily, she won't listen to this podcast. If she does, I'm sorry, but in the reality, in my opinion, that if you are smart enough to understand the positives and negatives as a father or a mother, in this world, it's different than even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you stay on top of it, which, you know, in my entire family, I'm the guy that everyone still goes to and asks, how do I do this or how do I do that? Yeah. So I feel like I have a good leg up on that, and I'm going to consistently keep an eye out. I mean, I do the Cub Scouts, and like I'm a pack leader, and I talk to all the kids there and the kids' parents about it, that you have to be cognizant of what they're getting.
So let me ask you, how does your wife feel about gaming?
Oh, she hates it, but that's how she got me, man. She told me she loved video games. And I used to, when I was you talked about bringing your computer to LAN parties and stuff. Before I met her, we did that. And but we played StarCraft. And
so she knew what she was getting into. See, my wife had no idea.
She did. She acts like all of this craziness in my room and everything, like this is all new Kevin, but it's really not. I mean, this is Kevin as I get older and have a little bit more money to spend on this stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's the only difference. Now I can afford things that I wanted to buy back then.
Your wife didn't know, but you're now being flown to events.
Right.
That's crazy. So how did you handle it?
My wife's a teacher, so she's a 3rd grade teacher. So she battles this, I think, in the multiple areas. And it's funny now that, like, you know, someone
is she the
says,
coolest teacher around because of you?
She's pretty cool, just in general. My wife's a really cool tech. But my wife has, I think she's adapted it pretty well for the most part. But she does have a problem with my son playing a lot of video games. And I was talking to one of my best friends the other day about this. And when we were kids, we just wanted to play video games. Yeah. My mom would yell at me and tell me, go do something else, go outside, go down to the lake, go to your neighbor's house, whatever, just get off the games. And I didn't want to. I just wanted to play games. And I don't think that was bad. Like, I'm not socially awkward. At least I don't think I am. My son's not socially awkward. And I tell my wife that, like, he can talk to people. He's very outgoing. So I can understand, like, if maybe somebody's not being social and gaming maybe is keeping them from being able to cope with certain things. I get that. And I'm sure anything can be used as a coping mechanism, right? Like, anything can be used as that.
But think about this, though. Back then, there wasn't, I mean, when I say back then, but when socially awkward and gaming were relevant together, it was before you could game with others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the stereotype of, like, a gamer in a mom's basement, sure, that exists. Like, there's people that are like that. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely people that are, smoking lots of weed, sitting in their mom's basement, playing video games and having a good time. And that's their choice. That's their life, whatever they want to do. But it definitely the barrier between the nerd and the popular kid has been broken a lot by video games.
It was taboo to talk about Star Wars when I was a kid, and now look at the world we're in today. It's just everything.
You can't go to a high school right now and not say you play Fortnite. Right now, you'd be like, oh, cool. I'm glad you play Fortnite. You want to play together. But if you would have said Fortnite, like whatever, if you wanted to say back in the day, like when I was in high school and I graduated in 2004. If you wanted to say back in 2000, oh, I play Halo, like literally the mix of people would have been like, oh, you play games? You play video games? Like, oh, okay. And that's not the case anymore. Like you're weird if you don't play video games.
100%. It's funny. We were at a county fair, and my son walked up to the banjo players and just started doing the Orange Justice, and it was like, I don't know why he did that, but he's got a personality on him that is awesome. And all of a sudden, it was like 8 kids of every age range, from high school to younger than 8, and they all just started doing the Orange Justice together, and they all just kind of nodded at each other, and we walked away, and I was like, man, there's a new form of communication out there, and it's. Immediately any of those kids could have walked up to each other and exchanged, handles.
I heard the best line. I tried to use it on my wife the other day when she's telling my son to get off video games, and I don't try to debate her ever in front of him about it because I don't want that controversy to occur. And we see eye to eye on almost everything. But I said to her, so tell me, if you have a son that loves to paint and all they do is stay in the garage and paint all day, are you going to tell him to stop? If you have a son that loves to throw a baseball and he sits outside and he throws a baseball all day long, are you going to go tell him to stop? He's good at those things. If my son is good at video games, why are we telling him to always stop, right? Like, I get if other things are suffering. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the free time that's available for you to have that's out there, for you to be able to say, hey, no, don't do that because it's not good for you. Like, my wife pulls out all these studies, okay? That's what she does. She'll be like, oh, there's tons of studies that show screen time for children is very bad on their eyes and their brain. It makes them dumber. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Whatever study you read, fine. Like, you can take their study. But I can tell you right now, like, Dr. Lupo, Ben, is one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. Literally one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. And he's not an idiot, and he spends hours and hours a day sitting in front of you.
I'll tell you.
You look at like Professor Broman or Gathalion. They literally started in Destiny. They built a coffee brand based around King's Coast Coffee. Was based when Destiny 2 launched. They launched their coffee brand the same time so they could get it out, and it's blown up. It's one of the largest private coffee brands in the United States now. They're continually expanding, growing families. And it happened because of video games. Like, this is what I'm trying to tell my wife is like, sure, people, it's not just the screen. Like, what's occurring, what's happening, the relationships that are being built and what's going on is a whole different ecosystem than what people realize. And
it's so connected, and with everyone being, I mean, you said it yourself at the beginning when Fortnite, they've changed the face of all of this with being on every platform, forcing Sony to play ball. It's a different world. Kids can talk about it openly. They can be. It's part of schooling now. I mean, esports teams are popping up in high schools, and it's a true. The one of the analogies or stories I always say is, it's not taboo to see somebody with a full set of jerseys for a football team, right? My friend Jerry, he's a regular on our podcast, and he has like 100 jerseys, and these are all pretty expensive jerseys, right? And so people spend money for season passes to go to the baseball, football games. They're spending thousands of dollars a year on this stuff. And there's a whole lot of people who aren't sports fans. And not to pigeonhole an idea or a group of people, but a lot of people playing these video games, the older people anyways, are in the industries of they have jobs, they're getting paid pretty good. And they might not be buying jerseys. Now they have an avenue. They can go to Twitch. They can go to, they can give $5 here and there. It's not a lot of money to some people to be able to subscribe or to do the Patreon or to do all these little things. And there's so much of it. I just look at it that way. When you're watching Twitch and you see someone get a $100 tip or 100 gifted subs, and you're just mathematically in your head, you're like, man, someone just spent $125 or $1,000 and just dropped it on this guy. I mean, I watch Dr. Disrespect all the time, and people know he's got some money, right? And people are still throwing money at him. It's entertainment. We enjoy football, we enjoy baseball, basketball, whatever it is. Well, now people who wouldn't normally spend money on those things have an avenue. And my first real Twitch experience was watching Lyric, and he played. I've been on Twitch for a long time, but first time I dropped money, I was watching a Lyric stream a game, and I wanted to buy the game. It was a 9-hour experience. I watched him play the whole game, beginning to end. And at the end of it, I said, well, I don't need to buy that game. And I sent him $5. And it was like, my wife, why would you do that? Well, I don't need to buy it. It was a $60 game. I don't need to buy it. I just watched this guy. He spent his time. He was entertaining. I mean, I would spend $9 on a movie. So it's a world out there that I think a lot of people, I can't even convince my brother or one of my closest friends, Darren, to understand the potential, and it hasn't even been tapped yet. You can look around and see thousands and thousands of people entering the market every day, streaming, Twittering, YouTubing, all of that stuff, but at podcasting too. But who's doing it right, and who cares to do it right? And if you navigate and you do what you're doing, I mean, look, you've had a couple of you obviously have trialed and errored some things, but you've hit success, and the sky's the limit for you. Joe and I, we're a year in almost, and 57 episodes or 56 episodes in on this, and we're just getting started with the other stuff. And it's like, I know no matter what, if we push and provide good content, the key is making it worthwhile, but being cognizant of what is worthwhile, and dropping off the things that aren't, focusing on the things that are. The space is plentiful for anybody to really get in. So it's so new.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of untapped space. There's a lot of new space. I mean, we're continually seeing the esports market, especially. I think esports is a huge, huge market of gaming that's going to really, really continue to take off. I'm a true believer. If I had millions of dollars, I would invest in esports. Like I believe the return on investment in the next few years is going to be humongous. If you look at,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you look at trends like, for instance, complexity gaming being sold to Jerry Jones. Right. And, and the Golf family, I think it is. Both of them, like, coming here to Dallas, bringing complexity to Dallas. They rebranded. They have a new brand that's similar to the logo of the Star for the Cowboys. They opened up a new GameStop front training center here in Dallas. That's like incredible. Like, they have a catwalk where the pro teams can be playing on each side. So the public can walk through there and like literally look face to face with these players behind glass while they're playing competitive things. Like, this scene is
popping up.
Yeah. This whole scene is only growing. And when you have someone that's as smart as the Joneses have been, they own the Cowboys are the largest franchise in sports history worldwide. Nobody is bigger. I think Madrid soccer is really, really close, but like worldwide, the Cowboys is just unbelievable, right? The Dallas Cowboys
the market, it just shows you, because they have the stats to prove that it's worthwhile.
If they're not going to go invest millions of dollars, build a esports like training facility with GameStop by the way, this is at the most prestigious area in DFW. This is at the Star Metroplex where the Cowboys practice, okay? Complexity's team, in case you don't know, their players live on at the Star campus in high-quality apartments that Cowboys football players live in. They get to train in the same facilities. They use the same chefs. They get the same food. They get the same trainers for weight training. They have and now they have the #1 training esports facility in the world right there, okay? And they're not going to spend all this millions of money if they don't see the trends are going to pay back, right? One thing you can know about people that have a lot of money is they don't spend money unless they know they can make the money back.
Yeah, 100%. And on that note, because I do have to run here in a few minutes to pick up my sons from their daycares and stuff, but I do want to touch upon one last thing. You are the Fortnite guy, right? So I'd like you to just, if you could, just sum up what this Fortnite World Cup is, what it is in reference to esports, and where we're at with it. I know some of the answers to this, but I'd like you to just kind of give a summary there, And tell us, so like, how can people tune in, and are they too late if they haven't gotten involved yet?
So you're not too late. The great thing about the qualifiers is that it's open to the public. So you play arena, you get like your first 150 points in arena, then you get moved to the pro arena. That's like champions, which is like 300 points, and then if you make that on Saturdays, then you can play on Sundays. They take like the top 3,000 people in the world each week. The thing about that's so special about this is, I don't expect a esports event to be bigger than this year. This is $30 million they're putting on the line, with $1 million each week.
And what's the date? Do you know the date of the actual final event?
July 25th, I believe it is.
Okay, so it's like a couple months to go before they build up the rankings and so
yeah,
right now
so we're in week 7. This is coming up on week 7. So the odd weeks are solos and the even weeks are duo weeks. So we got 7 and 9 left, and then we got 8 and 10 left for duos. But yeah, the championship's going to be in New York. Basically, they're taking the top 200 players. So they're taking 100 players for or 50 duos, right, for that, and then they're taking 100 solo players for the solo. The thing is, a lot of the solo players are also winning the duos thing, right? So,
yep,
that's a good thing. I mean, I guess it saves on airfare for Fortnite as well. Not that they probably care, but right. But the World Cup, man, is going to be a blast. I think it's going to be, Fortnite never does anything that's normal in the esports scene. And I don't expect them to have anything else normal. It's July. It's from the 25th to the 28th. So it's a 3-day thing. From my understanding, one day is creative, one day is duos, because creative has a $3 million prize by itself. And then one day is going to be solos, one day is going to be duos. They also have the block party that's happening in June 15 and 16, which is basically the Pro-Am. So the Pro-Am that they did last year at E3, they're bringing it back this year. So they're doing another Pro-Am. And then I think
awesome.
There's the 15th and 16th. So I think the 15th is like a normal. They invited a lot of personalities out, like Courage and Dr. Lupo and Ninja, to just have a normal 1v1 kind of tournament, right? And then they'll have the Pro-Am the following day, from my understanding. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Fortnite put a lot of its events in the later half of last year. You had PAX in Seattle in September, and then you had TwitchCon in like October, whatever it was. Those 2 big events almost back to back, right? Literally a month and a half apart. And I think you're going to see the same thing going into the later half of this year. You've seen this buildup of how they're doing tournaments, and I think you'll see the block party in July, in June. You'll see you'll see the World Cup in July, and I expect something to be announced very, very soon of what's going to happen in the fall. So whether they bring back fall skirmish or what they do, I don't know, but it's going to be entertaining to see. They're continually going to mold the community. They're going to change it up and figure out ways to make it competitive Fortnite, not esports Fortnite.
Yeah, I really, really fell in love with those skirmishes, and I'm more of a beginning to end kind of guy. My attention span kind of gets lost when I see them jump into the end of a game with some of this World Cup stuff. But I mean, I get there's so many different versions, so many different games going on, and they just got to consolidate it all. But I'm looking forward to those moments of being able to see the starting points. I love the whole aspect of each game and the story that's built, and I think that's what people love about Fortnite over top of watching a Destiny or watching some of these other games that they get a big following. Even Apex is really fun to play, but there's a story told in Fortnite that you can't tell anywhere else. And
Fortnite can be Fortnite. Like there's nothing else that'll ever be it because of the ability for them to put whatever they want. Like they want to put Michael Jordan event in the game, they can. They will put a John Wick event, they can. They want to put a Marvel event, they can. Like they created this world.
They brought the John Wick, even though there was already a John Wick.
I loved it. I loved it. I love that. That event was awesome. That game mode was freaking sweet. I hope, please, Epic, bring it back. But yeah, a lot of great things that they're doing that only fit in Fortnite and won't fit anywhere else, right? You can't go put Marvel in PUBG. It just would not work.
Wouldn't work.
That.
Did you see the post on Reddit a couple weeks ago? Since you're a controller player, there was a post about how Epic should give us more customization with the controller and being able to switch from weapon to weapon using just the L1 and R1 buttons, right? And real quick, it was hold down L1, you get position 1. Tap L1, you get position 2. L1 and R1 together, you get position 3. Tap R1, position 4, and then hold down R1, you get position 5. And, you know, the ones you have to hold down for a millisecond or two, you can put potions and whatnot there. But giving us the ability to get to certain weapons or items faster. What do you think of that? That's my last little tidbit before I...
if you remember, color customization has come a long way with them. They're the first game that ever let us, I think, on PlayStation, literally change what you want every button to be mapped to. I don't remember a game before that if they did. I didn't play it, at least. But they literally let you have whatever you want. They've changed the sensitivity to building. They've changed the sensitivity to allowing you to enter edit mode, right? All that stuff has changed. It's not out of the works. Like, I think every time we see an update, it's a quality of life improvement. They continually give a quality of life improvement, and this is going to be another quality of life improvement. I think eventually you'll probably see something like that. I wouldn't put it out. I mean, they love to take things from the community and implement them in, and you know, this is just a start to something I think they're going to continue to polish. They keep trying to polish their game. They keep trying to make it better. They want it to be the best game in the world, and I've sat there and talked to them many times, and I remember I had a meeting with their PR guy at TwitchCon last year, and he said to me, I think I've said this on the podcast, I said, hey, are you guys ever going to take the game out of beta? And he says, what's beta? He said, like, what is beta at this point, right?
Up in the top of your screen, it says it every game. No, I think that's probably more of a joke than anything at this point.
Yeah, well, here's the reason why. I don't know if you've ever heard me explain this, but and I don't have this confirmation for him. He basically said to me, finish out our conversation with their head of PR. He said, and his name's Nick. He said, the thing is we're going to put things in the game that are going to work, and we're putting things in the game that don't work. We don't have a problem trying new things, right? And that's what beta allows us to do. On the other side of that, for everybody out there that wants to know, and I'll leave you with this, the reason why Fortnite is still in beta, and my belief to it all, is that when you go through a console like Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo, that content, no matter what it is, no matter what third party created a video game, it has to be viewed and it has to be licensed by that console manufacturer, right? So what happens is when a game gets an update, a normal game comes out and gets an update like Destiny, it has to go through a registration phase that they actually have to clear, right? They actually have to test it, make sure it works, and then they send it to Sony, and then Sony reviews it, but they have to pay for the certification process. They call it a certification process. Well, what you get to avoid by having something in beta is you never have to go through certification process. So when Epic wants to update the game, they can update it today. They don't have to wait for Sony to tell them, yes, we can do it tomorrow. It is a loophole in the console era that occurs, but that's what's happening. Look, at the end of the day, what should happen is once a publisher or once a console a manufacturer decides, hey, this game's good on our console, they should just let the distributor do what they want to do at that point. Like if the studio wants to say we want to update our game every day, let them update the game. Stop putting behind these restrictions. And basically, Epic found a loophole and said, hey, we don't have to pay anything. We don't have to go through certification process. If something's broke, we'll fix it ourselves. We're going to fix it anyway. So we'll just keep it in beta form, and that's what they've done.
We've talked about that a couple of times on the podcast, and I always assume that they're paying us a big chunk of change to make these these patches, and that's amazing. Well, that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. That's awesome bit of information. Well, Troy, I do have to run, and I hate to be the one knocking you off the podcast, but you're awesome to talk to. Absolutely insightful information, and it's great to hear even more a little bit about your backstory and what made you what you are today. Do you have anything that you would like to, I know you talked about your Patreon upcoming, so I think everyone should be looking for that. Where would they go? Is it your Twitter? Is it your, is there
website? If you just follow us on Twitter, the Fortnite Podcast, it's just Fortnite Podcast. And then I'm glad I secured that one down early on.
Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, the Fortnite Podcast on Twitter, and then 2LoudTX. It's the number 2 LOUD and the letters TX for Texas. So 2LoudTX. And I'll tell you a story about that later on some other time. How about that? I'll tell you how I got my name one day. But yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for chatting. I love to chat. I like to talk too much, right? So I appreciate you being here and allowing me to come on to your show and talk to your community as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and keep on keeping on doing awesome content and awesome work. I'll be listening, and if you haven't and you're on my podcast, you should definitely subscribe to the Fortnite Podcast. Give them a shout out, and also make sure you rate them, because that's always a good way of giving them the idea and letting them know what they're doing right or wrong. And I think that not enough people rate podcasts and don't realize how important that can be. So yeah, thanks, Troy. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate the time, buddy.